In this video, we're going to take a bunch of spreadsheets from our Google Drive and combine them to a master spreadsheet. Just to show you what the situation is like, we have this folder in our drive. So if I open this one, master combined from G drive. So it's basically just an empty spreadsheet. This is where the master data is going to be combined. And then if I go back to this, see we have this worksheets folder. This one is just a file for now. We're not going to touch it. We're going to go to this worksheets. In this folder, we have 3 worksheets, and then we have a Google Doc file just to have something else in the mix. So there's nothing happening in this doc file. It's just a doc file. We're not going to touch it. We just have these 3 spreadsheets. And if I open this first one, see it's some data. If I open the second one, it's some more data. And then the third one. And just to make this a little more interesting, let's also make sure our columns are not exactly the same in all of these. So I'll just take one of these, for example, and delete state column. And for this file too, let's delete brand column. And it's still going to work using just the column names. So that's going to be our strategy. Another thing I want you to pay attention to is that the worksheets are not named the same here. See, this is 3, partial data 3, this is 1, this is 2. So instead of using the name of the worksheet, we'll just say, let's get the first worksheet in the file. But this is what we're dealing with. We need to combine all of this and put this in the master. And we're going to use Google Colab to make this happen. So for that, I'm going to go to colab.research.google.com. We're going to create a new notebook. And I'm going to name this. Now to get this started, let's just try to read one of these files and get the data from it. So if I wanted just to read this file 1, for example, what I would have to do, I would go back here. Let's open this existing codes and let's search for Google Sheets. And here we have this example, importing data from Google Sheets. So I'm going to click on that. This is the code that pops up. I'm going to delete this extra line. I don't need that. So here I'm going to do a few changes to this code. The first thing, I'm going to move this import pandas on top here. Then I'm going to grab all of this and add another code block and paste it below. Instead of open, I'm going to change this to open by key. And key would be the spreadsheet ID. And to get that ID, I'm going to go to that file 1, copy the URL. Go back to this, paste it right here. And then I'm just going to keep the ID part. So basically, delete everything starting from this d/ like this, and then delete everything after this / added. And this will be the ID of the worksheet. So this is going to open that file, and this is going to get us the first worksheet, this sheet 1 part. After that, we're going to read the data in that worksheet, and then we're going to get a pandas data frame. So I'm going to get rid of some of these. And here, we're going to change it a little bit. Instead of just creating it from all records, we want to use this first row as column headers and the rest of the data as the data. So for that, we're going to go back here. And in here, we're going to do rows 1 colon. So that should start from the second row and keep going for just the data. And then comma. And then for columns, we're going to use the first row. So I did explain this in a lot of other Google Colab videos I did. If you want more explanation, just watch the first Google Colab video I have in series to understand how exactly this works. But then we're going to save this in a data frame. So I'm going to say df equals to this. So right now, let's just run these few lines. I'm going to open another code block, and then we'll just log the df here to see what's happening. Does it even work? So let's start with this. I'm going to run this installation. That's done. Then I'm going to run this to get connection to my spreadsheets. And for that, we have to follow this link, get a code, copy it from here, go back, paste it in a box, and hit enter. Now we can run this line, and then we can run this to see what happened. And as you can see, we were able to read that spreadsheet, which, if I'm not mistaken, was this one. So far so good. So if we had to deal with a single spreadsheet, this is what we would have done. Now, the problem is we have all of these files in this folder. So we need to first try to read this folder that's called Worksheets. So for that, we're going to leave this code above the way it is for now. And we're going to go back here and try to find another piece of code. See, there's this thing that says listing files in Google Drive. That's what I'm going to click here, and it's going to put this code in here. And it's an example again. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to grab all of this and put it in another code block. All of this should happen before this above, but we're going to move it later on. So for now, let's just try to run this, and it's going to ask us for permissions again, most likely, or maybe we already have those, so it didn't ask for anything. Good. So that first permission we got here, that was enough. So let's try to now run this and see what happens. But before we run that, there is something we have to do here. See, right now, it just lists the files, and this is the way it's searching for the files. It's searching for files that basically have this .txt extension, and they're basically in root directory. So instead of doing this, I'm going to get rid of this part right here. And here, instead of this root, we're going to replace it with the ID of the folder where all the files are. So I'm going to go back to this. This is that folder. I'm going to copy the URL, go back to this, paste it instead of that root within those quotation marks. But I don't need the whole thing. I just need the ID. So I'm going to grab this part and delete it and keep just the ID. So basically the parent is this folder. So now let's try to run this code they gave us and see what it looks like. So as you can see, I got this. So basically what's happening here, it's printing the title and the ID of each file. If I go back and take a look, see we have, these are the file names, 4 files, and each one is going to have an ID. So if we go back and take a look, see, that's the name of the file, that's the ID. Now, because we have that Google Doc in this folder, we want to modify this in a way that it only grabs the spreadsheets instead of getting us all of this stuff that we get, including the doc in there. So to do that, see there's this search parameters URL. Let's go and check what they have in the docs. So let's try to see those parameters. So maybe it's under operators. There it is. See, there is this MIME type thing, and we can do like equals or not equals. So that's probably the way we need to make this happen. Now we need to figure out what that MIME type actually is. That should be the file type, basically. We could also filter by all of these other things, as you can see here listed. Now, for that, let's just do something here. Let's just comment this print. And instead, let's just print that file object here. So it basically gives us a file for each one. Let's see what's in that. See, it gives us a bunch of information. So out of that, they just printed title and ID. But we also have all these other things here. And one of those things, if you look here, is the MIME type. See how the first one is the spreadsheet type, the second one is a spreadsheet, and the third one is a document. So that's what we're going to use to filter this. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this, and at the same time, we want to do a second filter. So this is the first filter here. Now we need to figure out how we do the second filter. Is it and something probably? So let's take a look. It's just and. That's what it looks like. So I'm going to go here, do a space and do and mime type equals to, is that a single equal? Yeah, single equal to. And we need to provide probably the type in single quotes like this. So the type we're looking for is this for a spreadsheet. So I'm going to copy that and paste it right in here. So with this change, let me try to rerun this and see if that filters out that document. It seems like it does. See, we only have 3 now. Now let me get rid of this and do their print. And there it is. We got file 2, another file, and file 1. And that's exactly what we need. Let me close this panel. So that's so far what we did. We got the list of files, and the good part is that we got the list of IDs. That's actually what we're going to need. So let me just change this to print the ID of the file without the rest of this. And that's the ID of each file that we need to open and combine. And if you remember, when we're doing this, we were using the key, which is basically the ID of the spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to first move this block above because this should be in here someplace, either below or above this. I'll just put it below this block. Move it up, move it up, move it up. So that should be in that order, even though right now we're running things up and down. But later on, when we come back to run this, we're just going to go this one, this one, this one. That's the way we're going to go with this. Now, next, I'm going to move this one above this. And this is where we're going to get all those files in the drive in this particular folder that we have right here. And we're going to get our IDs here in this loop. So in that loop, we need to basically just open all of these things and save it in a data frame. So pretty much all of the steps should happen in the loop. But before the loop, let's create another code block. We need to have some sort of place to store all those data frames. So I'm going to create an array here. So if you did watch my tutorial about combining different tabs from the same spreadsheet, from this point on, it's going to be very similar. So we're going to create an empty list of frames. And what we're going to do, we're going to take all of this code right here. I'm going to cut it and put it right in here in this for loop. Should be aligned here because we're working with Python. Now here, instead of passing this key, we're going to pass the file ID, this thing. So that file ID is this ID, then this ID, then this ID. And we don't have to print this. Now we're going to get the data frame. And once we get the data frame, then we need to add it to this list of frames. So we're going to do list of frames dot append. And then we're going to add that df, which is a data frame, to that list of frames. So hopefully, if all of this works the way it should, we should be able to go and open all of these files, get the data from them, from the first worksheet, and basically put it in those data frames. Let's try to run this and see what happens. I'm going to take that and run this. Let me do this again. So no complaints, that's a good sign. Now let's take a look. So if I do list of frames 0, that should be the first data frame in that list of frames. That's good. This should be one of the files. Not sure which one it is. Let's take a look. It seems to be this one, file 2. Okay, let's take a look at 1. See, this one is 1/18/2017. So that seems to be this one, another file. And then finally, the third one should be that third file, 5/19/2015. There we have it. So However many files we have, it doesn't matter. It's just going to read all of them in this folder. And now we got them in this list of frames. It's just going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So now because we have this list of frames, we can combine them with pd.concat, which is the method in pandas to concatenate a list of frames, which is exactly what we're going to do. And we're going to save this in a variable. I'm going to run this, and let's just take a look at this to see what it looks like. And as you can see, it combined all of them together. Now, the ones that didn't exist in those columns, they come as NaN in that area. See right here, we have the brand. If you remember, I deleted those columns in some of them, so they don't match. So from what I found from combining different tabs, Google Sheets doesn't like those NaNs. So we need to get rid of them and replace them with a blank space, basically. So I'm going to just do that right here. So I'm going to do fill NA, and we're going to fill it with this blank. So now, if I run this and then take a look at this combined DF, we should see that instead of NaN, we just got blanks. I thought there was a set. Oh, there's this state. Yeah. So now that this is all combined, all we have to do is just write it to that spreadsheet we had here, the master data. So for that, we basically have to just access that spreadsheet. I'm going to copy this link right away. Go here. We're going to read similar to this one. See that GC dot, and then we're going to do open by key, and I'm going to paste this here and remove this part, just keep the ID. And in here, we need to write it to that master worksheet, which is basically this one. So I'm going to do that by doing worksheets master. And let's save this in a variable. So I got an error. Let me see what I did wrong. Maybe it's not called worksheets. Maybe it's worksheet. Let's try this again. Good. So this WS master should be that worksheet now. And now we should be able to write to that worksheet with update. Now to be able to write to that worksheet, we need to make sure we convert this data frame to a list of lists. So let's do that right in here. So I'm just going to say combined data equals to. So we need two parts, the column names from that data frame on top, and we need the actual data. Now, again, I have explained this in many other Google Colab videos, so I'm not going to go in depth here. I'm just going to write the lines. So we're going to take the column names and do two lists to get column names here. And then I'm going to take this data frame and do two numpy and then two list. So this should basically convert that data frame from pandas to a list of lists, which is what this is going to want to write to the spreadsheet. So right now, if I look inside of this combined data, just to see what's in there, see it's basically a list of lists with the first row being our column names. Good. So now that we have that, we should be able to write to our master worksheet. So we're going to take this and we're going to do update. We're going to start from A1 cell, and the data is going to be that combined data. And finally, we want this to be treated as if somebody was entering the data in a spreadsheet. So that would be value input option. And we want that to be user entered. So for that, we're going to do this. So let's just run this and see what happens. So no errors. That's good news. Let's go take a look. There it is. We have our master spreadsheet with all of this data combined together. And next time, we already have the script. So as long as you have your new worksheets here, It should just combine all of them to this master. So just to test this is why we had that yet another file. Let me just drag that over to that worksheets. So now we should have another file here, which is this one. See, with this weird data. So let's just try to rerun the script and see if that adds it to our master here as our combined data. So I'm going to go back here. So we need to run this. So if you closed it, you would have to rerun this from top down. But I don't have to run this from top down. I don't have to do this first few because those are connections basically. So I'm just going to start with this list of frames and go down. So this one, I'm going to run this. I don't really need this. I'm going to delete that. That was a test. I'm going to run this. I'm going to run this. And then this. You could just put all of this in a single block and run it together. I like having these step-by-steps because this way, if there's an error, you know what's going on. So as you can see, it wrote the data. Now let's go just check what happened. So let's find, see, there is that A, B stuff, which is now coming from this yet another file spreadsheet. And we have our master combined. And that should do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.